All right, the season's basically here. Welcome to a very special Sports Injury Central Pro Football Doc podcast. Have a great guest on today. Love what he does. We've been saying coach speak for years, and so glad to have Mr. Coachpeak Index, for lack of a better word, Greg Brainos on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Doc. Looking forward to this.
Well, we're here. You're the guest, and I'm not a professional interviewer. Tell us, tell the Pro Football Doc audience about you and how you arrived at Coachpeak Index.
Well, I've been playing fantasy football for a couple decades, and Coachpeak had just plagued fantasy football for so long. We could just constantly getting upset at coaches misleading us, and just happens year after year after year. Remember Jim Caldwell back in, I think it was 2014, saying, yeah, Calvin Johnson, he's 100%, definitely not going to be a decoy out there this Sunday. And then he's a decoy the entire game. And Zach Taylor in 2020 calling Joe Mixon day to day for weeks. And then Joe Mixon ends up going on IR, missing the rest of the season. And I was just tired of being rug pulled constantly by these coaches. And people had different ideas of which coaches were reliable, which coaches were not reliable. And, I say quickly realized, but it took a couple decades, but just had the realization that, well, hindsight is 2020. I can just go back 6 years on every coach, look at their actionable coach speak from press conferences and press conference transcripts, and log it all into a database, grade it as true or a lie or gray area, and put in full comments so I can always refer back to it. And just started building these profiles on each coach of, okay, we can listen to what Sean McVay says, and then we can completely disregard what coaches like Robert Saleh, Bill Belichick, Arthur Smith say.
Interesting. So, how much time did it take you to gather all that? And how much does it time take you every week to gather all this?
It took me 2 years to build the database. And now I'm watching every press conference from every head coach, every offensive coordinator, and every general manager. And at this point during the season, from training camp until the end of the regular season, it's about 40 hours per week worth of press conferences. And then, of course, there's the work that goes beyond that of logging it into the database, putting stuff on the Discord, putting stuff on Twitter, doing the podcast, of course, keeping abreast of all the information from beat writers and kind of marrying all that information together. So it's about 70 plus to 80 plus hours per week.
So this is now your quote day job or job.
Yeah,
what did you do before?
So I have a pretty extensive history of I spent many years running an underground high stakes poker game in North Carolina. I wrote for Yahoo Sports as a senior writer there for NFL and the sports book at Yahoo, and also stand up and some screenwriting. So a very wide ranging history before this.
No, I get it. Look, I reached out to you when I saw it because I said, I love this, right? I mean, this is great. It's something that, look, we're in the injury world and we talk often about coach speak, and we joke often about how do you know a coach is lying? And I don't like the idea of lying. They're moving their lips, okay? There's just, what do they want to tell you, right? And my, I guess, pseudo advantage is I was on the other side of the equation. I mean, I knew what lies that they were spinning and so forth. And like you, at least in terms of injuries, more than playing time, more than roster spot, more than contractual stuff, because I pay attention and we pay attention to injuries. I'm going to be curious to chat with you about how you come up with some of this stuff, because I have some opinions about injuries too. But I think also our clear advantage is you doing this by yourself? We actually have a staff of people. I mean, we're filled with the war room on Sundays, and you're doing all this by yourself. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a solo operation. There's just not a lot that I can delegate. You know, I need to watch every single press conference. I need to know how these guys speak, like just what their general kind of demeanor is when they're talking. There are cues that they give off with body language. I've also started tracking poker tells from these coaches as well. Yeah, so it's just very important that I need to have every single piece of information from these press conferences. There are a lot of things that don't go reported from a press conference because the beat reporters are, well, a lot of them, they're not playing fantasy football, right? I'm approaching this kind of from a fantasy football and betting angle. So they're reporters. They're keeping everybody updated on every single player from the team. There's a lot of questions about defensive scheme and all that stuff that doesn't relate a lot to fantasy football, but you can still get some good nuggets from the coaches and just their way of thinking. And hey, does this coach speak openly about offensive and defensive scheme, or do they keep things really close to the vest? So yeah, just
in a lot of ways, Greg, we're brethren. So at Sports Injury Central, what we say is we're the only injury site that does true injury analysis as opposed to injury reporting. And what we mean by that is we love Adam Schefter, and what he reports is very good, but it's reporting as opposed to analysis. It's quoting the agent, the player, the team, the coach. And we're trying to read in between the lines. We're looking at primary sources like you are. We look at the video and how a player is recovering or moving and analyze that in the recovery process, but also in the front end of the injury process. We're doing analysis, and it sounds like that's what you do, right? There's a very qualitative aspect to it, which is why you feel like you have to do it, right? To be most accurate instead of farming it out. Like, I love PFF, right? But they farm out, okay, grade the block this way, AB, right? It's not a coach doing it. And maybe there's some inner differences. You're doing it all yourself, which is fantastic. All right, so let's cut to it here and have some fun. Give me, and it doesn't have to be just one, if there's ties or something, who, in your impression, is the most honest head coach about injuries?
I would say Sean McVay is the most candid and the most honest. If there are many coaches who are honest about injury coach speak. Like, for instance, it's very surprising. Jim Harbaugh is very honest about injury coach speak, but that's when he actually offers up information. When he says, yeah, we expect this guy to play this week. Okay, you can pretty much take that to the bank that guy will play. The thing with him is that he so rarely answers those questions. So Sean McVay, you ask him a question about a player's injury, and he will tell you about the injury. He will tell you whether he expects that player to miss some time, and he'll tell you whether or not you need to worry about it. Very, very extensive history for McVay.
Well, let's mark John Harbaugh. Let me come back to John Harbaugh and let's have a fun discussion about him. Sean McVay, I agree with you in general. He's overall honest. He's very simplistic. He doesn't give you a lot of medical details, which gives him a lot of room to be not lying. And he is a little bit of a chatterbox and fairly revealing. But I find that he does talk around a little bit. He's not lying, but yeah, you're right. I think he's one of the better ones. Believe it or not, I'll throw you two ones that I think have been very honest. Kyle Shanahan's, to me, seems very honest.
Absolutely.
With his injuries. He's one of the more honest ones in my book. The other guy that I think is incredibly honest, and my guess is that you probably have him as one of the most dishonest, is Bill Belichick. Here's why I say Bill Belichick is honest. He never lies. He just doesn't tell you anything. He just
Yeah,
says, so you never catch him in a lie because he never says anything. Now, if you're
right.
saying holding back injury information, he's at the top. If you're saying lying, he doesn't lie. He just doesn't say anything. Now, he'll put 20 people as questionable and make you guess which one's out and which one's playing. If you want to call that lying, okay. But technically, if there's a 1% chance you might not play, you can be listed as questionable. Who plays the most games with injuries? It might be Coach Belichick. Who is the most honest? It might be Coach Belichick. He doesn't lie. He just doesn't say, right? He says, look at the injury report. That's it, right? So it depends on how you grade it. You could say, look at the injury report is tremendous, Coach Speak, and you put him at the bottom, right? So I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just pointing out that Belichick, when his lips move, he's not lying. He's just not telling you, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, just for the record too, the reliability ratings that we have, that's based on actionable coach speak, which we define it as the coach is leading you to believe that there is a greater than 50% chance of what they're saying. So if they're saying I expect him to play this week, then that's actionable coach speak. If they're saying we hope he can play this week, that is not actionable coach speak. That does not go into the database.
Got it. Got it.
So
right. So there's
right. So people will be like, well, Jim Harbaugh is unreliable because he doesn't give us information. So we're not grading it on he's holding back information. We're grading it on when they say something actionable, does it end up being true or did they mislead us?
Got it. So when they're skirting the gray line, you don't hammer them, right? You're just
right.
Like when they make a definitive statement. So the other person I'll throw out there that I thought was always very honest. He's not coaching in the NFL anymore right now, but I think he's getting back in. My good friend Ron Rivera. I don't know, especially Sunday post-game press conferences. I follow everything he says. I know Coach Rivera and his wife. So one time I guess it's fine for me to say this. I mean, it's all public, I guess. But I said, Coach, I know what you do when you talk to media about injuries on Sunday. He said, oh, what's that? I said, you don't like to lie. He goes, nope, I'm an honest guy. I don't like to lie. So you just make a point of not talking to the head team physician or head athletic trainer till after you meet with media on Sunday. So you go, well, I don't know. I don't know what's happening with his knee. And then as soon as you're done with the interview, you go talk to him all and figure out what's going on. So he doesn't lie at all, at least not on Sundays. Now, what happens on Monday and Wednesday, that it becomes more coach speak in your world.
And that, and that is an interesting thing to sorry to interrupt, but with the post-game press conferences right after the games, a lot of times these coaches don't know exactly what's going on with these players. And for instance, last season with Kyron Williams, they hadn't sent him for any MRIs or anything after the game, and he was bouncing around the locker room like he was fine. And they asked Sean McVay about him and said, he looks good. But then the next day they get the test and imaging done, and then McVay reveals like, okay, he has an injury. So stuff like that, the post-game press conferences, if they end up not giving us that information, then like we grade them very harshly. But if they come right out and say, hey, this is something that we just like, there was no way for us to know at the time, then we definitely give them some grace in those areas.
Let me tell you, Monday morning is the injury check, or the day after the game, right? And especially if you're on the road, a lot of guys that have stuff are like, let me just get to the plane. I'll put some ice on it. I'll figure it out Monday. They don't always come into the training room, and a lot of times they want to get out of there and get dressed and what have you. So there's no question injury reports aren't more final until Monday, and we get the MRIs, et cetera. All right, so let's go the other way. Who are the biggest liars or in your coach speak index? And it's fine. Don't let me sway you from Bill Belichick. I was just making the comment.
No, well, no. He's not in there anymore. I mean, we still have his data, but don't consider him as an active coach, certainly. Robert Saleh is now on the bottom rung as far as all coach speak, and very unreliable with his injury coach speak. Really funny situation last year that kind of encapsulates Robert Saleh is offensive lineman Dwayne Brown had missed 3 days of practice, and the reporters asked him, do you think he'll be able to go this Sunday after missing 3 days? He said, yeah, it'll be fine. We expect him to play. And then they placed Dwayne Brown on IR the very next day. And this is just a very Robert Saleh thing. It's and I don't know how much of it is like, does he just not care about being honest, or is he just such an optimist that he's kind of trying to just will these things to happen through hope and positive thinking?
Well, when you talk about being optimistic, in our Six Score Sports Injury Central war room, we had a phrase for one of the coaches who's not coaching anymore this year, Pete Carroll. We used to call him Pollyanna Pete. Everything was coming up roses always, right? It was always a super optimistic estimate, no matter what it was. And it's almost to the point where you feel like he's just not lying. He's just that Mr. Optimism.
Absolutely.
Any sliver of optimism, he blows it up. And literally our nickname was Pollyanna Pete. Everything was coming up roses with him.
He was the very first coach that I worked on for the database. And it was really fascinating with him because I found this pattern of during training camp and preseason, everything leading up to the regular season, his injury coach speak was pretty honest and reliable. But then once we got in season, completely unreliable in that area. And it also that flipped around for player usage and workload coach speak to where you could not trust what he would say in the preseason. And then once we get into the regular season, you could actually trust most of the time what he was saying about that.
And that's great. And that's a great thing you've done with Coachpeak. We just deal with the injury side of it. We don't track the play side of it. But so worst is Robert Saleh. Now, you said earlier you kind of like John Harbaugh. Was it Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh?
Jim Harbaugh, the Chargers coach.
Jim Harbaugh. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. Jim Harbaugh, who was a quarterback for the Chargers. I love Jim Harbaugh. He's, you know what he is? You think he's crazy, all this enthusiasm known to mankind. And you know what? You know why players love him? Because he's authentic. That's him. It's not an act. Media thinks it's an act. Love Jim Harbaugh.
He's having a great time. He's just loving
life.
Does
things his own way, eccentric, but because he's authentic, the players buy in. Love Jim Harbaugh tremendously. I mean, we had some fun in San Diego, some good stories and different things. Look, we talked about it once on a podcast here. When Jim was playing football and he was at the end of his career in San Diego with the Chargers, I asked him, what do you want to do when you, quote, grow up, when you're done with football? You know what he wanted to do? He thought, he's a lifer in football. He thought he wanted to be an NFL referee. I mean, that's a true story. At least when he was playing in San Diego, he toyed with that idea.
Yeah.
Obviously, that went by the wayside, et cetera, and he does a lot of other things. Now, I know Jim Harbaugh very well, and I couldn't be more thumbs up. And I agree he's honest, and he probably talks around things in a very eccentric way.
Yeah.
But the guy that I would say is among the hardest to get, and I would call the most dishonest, up there with Robert Saleh, is actually his brother, John. Where does he rate?
John Harbaugh?
Yeah.
John Harbaugh actually rates pretty good on injury coach speak. He sometimes, especially in training camp, you really do have to take what he says with a grain of salt. Once we get into the regular season, his timelines are definitely more reliable than during training camp and the preseason, but pretty reliable overall. I believe it was yesterday, he was talking about Rashad Bateman and how he expects him back real soon. And I believe just got a report today that Rashad Bateman is back. But Yeah, when he is giving like kind of longer timelines, which is something that usually happens in training camp, then we're getting into like kind of a gray area with John Harbaugh, where yeah, we can't always, believe what he's saying with those longer timelines.
Now, we might argue at Sports Injury Central that John Harbaugh, John, not Jim, from our perspective, and this is just opinion, right? So it's all good to have a
Mhm.
discussion, is very, very, very hard to pin down. There
Mm.
are absolutely times where he's telling you the exact truth. And it feels like to us, he's trying to suck reporters in and win them over by revealing things to him that aren't very important. And he might be scoring points on your
Mhm.
Coachpeak Index. But when it's really important to him, we've seen him constantly mislead and lie his ass off. Not this season, the last 2 seasons for the Ravens. Every Monday, he would say, Lamar Jackson's close. We expect him to practice Wednesday. Is that a
Yeah.
lie? I don't know. But every Friday, he got ruled out. Every Monday, we said with the PCL or the ankle bone bruise in the not this December, but the 2021 and 2022 seasons, Lamar got ruled out by the end of the week. And for us, where that's important, Lamar Jackson, I mean, that's a lot of line movement, right? From
Mhm.
Monday to Friday when he's ruled out. But John Harbaugh is one of our guys that I won't say he's a liar, very unpredictable. There are times he's telling you the absolute truth in great detail and winning you over. And there are times he is absolutely misleading you and lying. And the key is, how do you figure it out? Now, how we figure it out is we actually look at the video and say we don't think, and we go against it. But he's a very interesting one. But given the magnitude of Lamar Jackson in 2 straight Decembers, we actually have him as one of the least trustworthy because you don't know what he's trying to say. You really have to analyze it, at least in terms of those. So at least that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at.
One of the big things for Coachpeak Index that helps us in this area, especially when there's a large sample size and it's a coach who's been around for a while, is language matches. Because all of these coaches, like all of us, they have their own vocabulary sets,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of what they say is just like it's subconscious. The certain phrases that they use in relation to players and injuries, and that's something that we see with many of these coaches, and that was a really key one in deciphering Pete Carroll, who you pointed out, very tough to pin down, is when he said a player has a good chance to play. That player usually didn't end up playing. When he said a player has a really good chance to play, we saw that player play the large majority of the time. So getting these language matches, this is why in the database I put, full quotes in there, really long quotes, which is something that we've all gotten away from in this day of, short headlines and aggregated little headlines. Just one tiny little quote from a coach that's not always accurate of everything that they've said. So I put the full quotes in there, and then when Pete Carroll says really good chance, I can look at the database and see what is the history when Pete Carroll says really good chance on a player.
Have you gotten any pushback from teams or coaches when you're saying that they're honest or dishonest?
Not directly. I do have a lot of NFL personnel from teams who were following the account. There was a really funny moment actually last year with the Commanders press conference where they had a hot mic, and it picked up some stuff after right after the press conference was over, and they ended up going back and editing that video. It was pretty fun, but yeah, they follow. There's a lot of personnel from the teams that follow Coachpeak
Well, going
Index.
back
So
to John Harbaugh, not Jim.
mhm.
When Flacco was with the Ravens, as we did our research, we said Joe Flacco has a herniated disc based on what Ravens.com said his symptoms were and what he had, right? And this is why we were concerned about Joe Flacco. At the time, I wasn't smart enough to do screenshots. The next day, the Ravens.com article came down.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I
Yeah.
do think teams are going to follow what you're saying and be careful. And the PR
Which I
guys
don't
for
love
sure,
that.
right? The
Yeah.
PR guys for sure. I guarantee you, they're following what you're saying, and
Yeah.
they're telling coaches what you're saying. So a coach that says they might be coached to don't use the term really good anymore because they have a beat on that kind of thing. So I think your effect is probably greater than you even see, right? I mean, these teams, they all know what people are saying about them. And I've seen it from the Charger side and other side. They know, they follow what I'm saying. They follow, I'm sure, what you're saying, and, you know, the right departments and get all that information. So I love what you're doing. What this is like a full-time, more than full-time job for you. You're gonna try and do more, or this is it, or what's your how do you monetize this stuff? Oh my gosh, you gotta like put food on the table. What's there?
Yeah, I'm starting to monetize it now. I signed a partnership deal with Underdog Fantasy. I
Oh, good.
started up a private Discord where I'm watching the press conferences, and there's so much important information that's being said there, but I can't tweet out, hey, here's 7 different things that this coach said during this press conference. So I'm putting all of that information into the private Discord. I'll watch the press conferences. I'm typing up notes while I'm watching it, and as soon as it's over, I put it into the Discord. And then if there ends up being a Coachpeak clip like Matt LaFleur talking about his running back room rotation, then I'll put that onto the Twitter an hour after I put it on the Discord. So that's one way. Did have some acquisition talks a few months back with a few big companies. That's probably something that will happen in the future, maybe in a year or two. I'd like to kind of build everything up a little more. The goal is about 100,000 followers by the end of the NFL regular season, and it's really starting to snowball right now. We're getting hundreds of new followers every day now, which kind of expected once training camp kicked off and people are looking for valuable information for their fantasy leagues that they'll jump on board. And of course, having all the industry people follow the Coachpeak Index so closely and always shouting us out on their podcasts definitely helps a lot. So this is the second year, and it's growing, and I think it's already among the most valuable tools in fantasy football. And I think
I would tell you this:
be recognized.
congratulations, and I hope you continue to grow. Look, I just saw you very recently. That's when I reached out. I don't know why my head's been in the sand or something. My Twitter feed, I actually don't do the random feed. There's too many people. I follow a couple, an NFL list of about a dozen people, and then there's a 49er list and a Seahawks list and a Cardinals list. So I don't see a lot of generic stuff. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, I love this. And that's when I reached out to you, because we talk about Coachpeak, and you should get paid for what you do. And I hope you get acquired. And hopefully our podcast luck continues to rub off on you, in the sense that, for example, My Sports Update, Ari Meroff, first ever appeared on a podcast, said his real name, not My Sports Update here, and then not because of us, but he was on the verge of blowing up. Some others that are out there. I mean, Dan Orlovsky was just a guy on Twitter, not everywhere on ESPN. When I said, oh, this guy knows what he's doing, there's something to it. And there's a few other of those little examples. So I hope the streak and luck continues with you. You deserve it. I mean, the Freezing Cold Takes guy came on, and he continued to blow up in a book. I mean, I love these interesting different situations like you have, and want to shine a light on them. And I love it. And look, and I appreciate how your Coachpeak Index is actually well refined, but different than my peer injury side of things, right? Like we actually will downgrade a guy like John Harbaugh. We're hopeful he's going to play and practice this week. Even though that's a non-committal answer, we're like, no, you're going to
Mhm.
that he's not. So you're
Yeah.
being disingenuous. So in some ways we grade differently, but I think I love what you do with the schemes and everything else too. But it's all good. It's all good information. Anything else you want to talk about, Greg? Oh, the floor is yours before we sign off with you here and start part 2 of the Pro Football Doc podcast.
No, I would just say go check us out on Twitter at Coachpeak Index. Training camp is in full swing. Preseason is upon us, and before you know it, week 1 will be here, and we are a tool that you're going to need in your fantasy football utility belt.
Yeah, and I hope what happens to you what happened to me doesn't happen to you. Whenever I meet people, whether it's Bet Bash, this, that, the other, fantasy, oh, I love your fantasy stuff. You're great. You helped me win the league and the injuries and waiver wire pickups. But I don't tell anybody because you're my secret weapon. I
Yeah,
don't tell my
that's a
friends
big obstacle.
because right, I don't want
Yep.
them to get the advantage that I have. So I don't tell my friends about you ever. I'm like, oh, great. We give
Mhm.
all this stuff for free. You don't even tell your friends, right? And hopefully
Yep.
you can bypass that fun little world and be very successful. We will continue, whether it's Sports Injury Central account or mine, whenever I come across it and see cool stuff related to injury, retweet and quote tweet you. I think it's great. Congratulations on your success so far, and hopefully much more success to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Great. And we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back for part 2 of the Pro Football Doc Sports Injury Central podcast. And thanks again to Greg at the Coachpeak Index. All right, welcome back to part 2 of the Sports Injury Central Pro Football Doc podcast on the Believe Network. Coachpeak Index. I think that guy was pretty good. I mean, he puts in a lot of time and energy and work, man. I mean, I got to respect the grind. I know. Look, can you imagine? I can't. I used to do it before we formed this company. Like, without you and all the other help that we have, I mean, I don't know how I could do it. He's listening to every coach's interview and corroborating what it is and keeping records on it all. You guys sent me a checklist with video links, and I go, okay. Now on Sundays we're all in the room and looking at stuff, but I don't know. More power to him. I hope he gets very successful. I hope he can make some money on it. Heck, with us, I mean, we're still mostly free, but there's some things like picks that done well and the data that we sell and so forth. But it's like, we got a staff of people. Like, it's not even going to me.
Yeah.
Anyways, by the way, I think you guys are all done. We spent a lot of time on the preseason injury preview.
Absolutely.
I think if you go to sicscore.com right now, it's still for a limited time completely free, just as the early bird gets the worm. And how many pages is it? I know it's all 32 teams and different charts.
It's over 80 pages, over 80 pages, and over 150 of the top players on each team.
Now, I will say, I'm not trying to say that this is like Warren Sharp's book, okay? But
500 plus, yeah.
if you have Warren Sharp's book, the only thing missing out of Warren Sharp's book, and we'll have Warren on the podcast maybe next week, just a matter of scheduling. His book is awesome. What he does is indispensable, 500 pages. But the only thing missing, and this is not a dig at Warren, because he wrote this over the spring and summer. As injuries continue to happen, the preseason injury preview is probably the only modification to this book. And we should put out, Warren was nice enough to give me a link. I should probably put that out here again, or Alex will put it on the bottom, the link to try and get that to help Warren out. He doesn't need help, but I would say that we're the best free complement to that. As a matter of fact, maybe I'll reach out to Warren and let him offer that to some of his people and get him on. But anyways, preseason injury preview, and there are some surprises in there in terms of who comes in injured and who comes in to the season healthy. And from that, I think you all in the room, using the algorithms and what have you, your what futures, you're at 75% basically, based on some of
Yes,
that
our
stuff.
win totals. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And that's sick picks at the site. All right, let's go with what we got here. What do we got this week?
So, Doc, the whole team at Six Score last week, we took a little trip to Bet Bash, huge betting conference in Las Vegas last week. Tell me your thoughts on this. We had a little seminar. We were talking to people about injuries, how to make money, your thoughts. We had our great Steve Fezzik joined you on a seminar. How did you feel? How did you have fun? What were your thoughts on the conference, Doc?
Best and worst thing. Best is, I think it's a great conference for bettors and so forth. It opened my eyes. I mean, as you know, I'm not a bettor, but what bettors want, they definitely liked what we were saying in terms of how injury changes things and closing line value and all sorts of. Everyone has their own betting angle, so I thought it was really good. Worst, I'd say, is I haven't spent a lot of time on Fremont Street. Fremont Street.
Me neither. That was a different animal for me.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to walk Fremont Street. I wanted to check it out, right? And look, interesting people. Yes, a lot of scooters, more power to people. But maybe you'll edit this in here. But I had you take a picture of it.
Yes.
I mean, there's a cafe there that says if you weigh over 350 pounds, you eat free. It's called the Heart Attack Cafe.
Yes.
And there's a scale outside where you can publicly say, and there's a 0 because no one's standing on it, and you can weigh yourself. Now, I should have gotten on it. I know I'm not 350, but I might not want everyone to know how much I am. I mean,
big number on it, yeah.
There's certainly a 2, and it's a low 2 in front of my name, but there's no 3. But oh my gosh, shouldn't it be the opposite, Taylor? Shouldn't people who weigh under 100 pounds go and eat there for free?
That's the reward, yeah.
I mean, Heart Attack Cafe, I don't know. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The best and worst thing combined is I would say me, because I kind of was in and out a little bit. I wasn't there long enough, yet I was there too long because it's a long day. You're talking to people a lot, which is I enjoyed talking to a lot of people, but the voice is hoarse. How about you?
Well, I love the seminars, Doc, because I definitely think I know about betting. I definitely help, I help our company make sure we know what we're doing too. But there's a lot of stuff I didn't know too. So there's betting 101 seminar, just learning how to do the little math and just understanding that. Went to a college football preview, went to the fantasy football, just seeing how we can use our stuff fantasy football. So, I mean, there's a lot of informative stuff. And like you said, it definitely is exhausting talking to everybody. But I mean, it was good meeting everybody that's doing stuff like we are.
Well, you told me this, that after our seminar, that you gathered some emails and cards of people, and we're going to give everyone the preseason injury preview.
They're not ready.
It wasn't even published yet. Now it is for a limited time. Like you can say, you can go on sicscore.com and get it for free for your email. The reason why you need the email is they'll send you a live link that gets updated. Sure, we publish it. It's a dead link, or give it to you. We need to send you the link that's live. But anyways, you were like saying there were a handful, don't say names, it's fine, of quote other sites injury people that were there scouting us.
Mm-hmm.
And my reaction to that, you were like concerned that we were like, I was like, great, I'm glad they came. I wish they would have come and said hello. I mean, the more the merrier. Look, the injury community and what it is, I would have said great. And in the conference, right, I said that the injuries are important. So, do I have a monopoly, or do we have a monopoly on injuries? No, and we shouldn't. But I feel like we have the unfair advantage of having worked in the NFL on the other side and treating injuries in a very qualitative fashion. And we talk about that every week. Not every high ankle sprain is the same, right? And so forth, and the different nuances. So look, if my shout out to other injury experts is, if I hadn't worked in the NFL as an orthopedic surgeon and head team doctor, I wouldn't be half as good as any of these injury experts are that are out there that do this stuff and put in a lot of work. And a lot of them are very fantasy based, which, I'm not. We're not strictly fantasy based. So there's definitely a role for what everybody does. and it should be complimentary. And I wish they would have come say hello at the end when there were a lot of questions and so forth. There's nothing. We're all good with everything, I guess.
Well, what
The
do you
only
talk
other thing I suppose I didn't like is I love Spanky and what he did with Bet Bash.
Great job,
I don't
honestly.
know that I love the topic, the title of the topic.
Oh, profiting from injuries. Yeah.
Profiting from injuries. I mean, it makes me feel like I'm an ambulance chaser, that, hey, we're hoping for injuries and profiting. I mean, yeah, I guess from a betting standpoint, that was the right title, profiting from injuries. But for a doctor, orthopedic surgeon to say profiting from injuries, I did not pick the title. In journalism, you have it all the time. You're a journalism guy. How often do you see a writer write the story and then the headline comes out and the writer gets grief for the headlines, and the writer goes, there's a headline writer at the newspaper. It isn't me, right? I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
Right? It's not me. My byline's on there, but the headline's not me. That was the case at Bet Bash. Profiting from injuries. Although I think it works for the gambling Bet Bash world, I didn't love it, but we didn't pick it, and it's Spanky's show, so we went with it, kind of thing.
And thank you for Steve also for joining your seminar, giving a little bit of your information. That was very valuable.
Enjoyed Steve and enjoyed coming out early to have dinner with him.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So the reason why, Doc, that the PDF is live, because stuff is happening constantly, right? So the first injury I wanted you to give you a couple. First one is a big one was Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown. He suffered an SC joint injury. Tyreek Hill a couple years ago from the Chiefs suffered the same instance. What are your thoughts on the injury that he suffered in the preseason game?
Well, full disclosure, I'm really not watching any preseason games, and we're not in the war room for preseason games. Because a lot of starters don't play, and if anyone has any minor issue, they're just ruled out. So there isn't I get there's a lot of gambling that still goes on at this point in time, but for my sanity, today was your kid and my kid's first day of school.
Correct. Yes.
Two of mine, one of yours, two of mine, one still not yet. So big day, and I need to mentally get to I got to get past Labor Day to really. No, we're still doing football all the time, but watching it kind of thing. I did just book one trip with my son. He felt bad this weekend. He didn't feel bad. He's fine. He lives a good life. He wanted to go to Morgan Wallen concert.
Oh, okay. The Friday one. Yeah, in Vegas.
And his twin sister went with mom because of some of her friends were going.
Okay.
Her 11-year-old friend. So it would have been a little more awkward to stay if a 11-year-old boy went. So instead, my football NFL season. Now we're going to do all the website stuff and all the injuries, but our live football watching won't start until after Labor Day. Labor Day weekend, I just booked a trip with Davis as a consolation. I've never been to an Alabama football game. Wow. I've been to an SEC football game before, but I've never been to Tuscaloosa in Alabama. And I figured that would be a good thing. And it's Labor Day weekend. The game is on Saturday, so there's no football. And he's off from school, even though he started today. So we're going to go do that with one of his little besties before we kick off the season. But in the meantime, preseason injury preview, lots of new things happening at Sports Injury Central, et cetera.
So getting back, Doc, to the Hollywood Brown SC joint, what were your thoughts about him?
Well, admittedly, you guys got me the video after the fact, and it is a fairly classic SC joint issue. It appears to be his left SC joint. Not that that really matters. So the good and bad news about it, people freak out when you say hospital, right? And rightfully so. And look, if there's a 1% chance of a problem, you should go to the hospital. And they have yet to detail what was done at the hospital. Most likely reduce the SC joint. The SC joints that need to go to the hospital. SC is sternoclavicular, not, as my former partner at the Chargers, Jerry Eason, said, it's not the SC versus UCLA joint. It's SC sternoclavicular joint versus the AC joint. SC, AC, clavicle, acromion, sternum, sternoclavicular joint. That's dislocated when he got rolled up on. The reason why it's potentially dangerous, if it goes backwards, it can injure the great vessels in your chest. And when you reduce it, there can be complications. He was discharged the next day. He's fine. It's reduced. It is a stable joint. It won't need surgery. Literally, how you reduce it, if you can't reduce it by stretching and manipulating, some anesthesia, literally a towel clamp, grabbing the clavicle, pulling it and pushing it forward, usually without an incision over the area. Once it's reduced, it will heal. The comp is Tyreek Hill in 2019 for the Chiefs. Missed weeks, happened week 1, missed weeks 2 through 5, missed 4 games. We're about 4 weeks away. To give Cheetah credit, I always thought that was a quick recovery. Now, maybe he took pain-killing injections to play in week 6. I always thought that was a quick recovery. Can Hollywood Brown play week 1? It's possible. But I think it's likely that he misses, and it wouldn't shock me. New team, getting up to speed, what have you, significance of injury. And Tyreek Hill, I think, came back faster than we expected. Wouldn't be shocked a 4-week PUP, active PUP or reserve PUP for the start of the season. Right. Wouldn't shock me. And so correspondingly, obviously, his 6-4 for the season, fantasy-wise, and the Chiefs' opening game stuff is affected a little bit by that.
Next one, Doc, I have, everybody's obviously freaking out, and he's been already precautionally sat down, is Christian McCaffrey. He's had a calf issue in the past. Is a whole month until the season starts, right? Is this something, do you think that the calf injury is expanding the entire month, or they are just sitting him out and waiting until the season starts?
Well, are you saying I should be freaking out because I drafted CMC and Scott Fishbowl 14?
Yes. Or no, right? Yeah. What are your I would say no, right? But I mean, like everybody, if CMC picks up something, they're worried he's going to miss 4 games and that's their season.
The curse of Madden, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The question is it a calf injury where they know it's significant and he's missing the rest of the preseason? Or is it a calf injury that's minor, and because they don't want it to linger, they just know he doesn't need the preseason time, same coaches, same system, preserve him to make sure it doesn't linger? I think it's the latter, okay? Yeah. We talked about a Coachpeak Index, how we think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, who I love, full disclosure, San Diego guy, I love him. I think he's very honest. I think Kyle Shanahan is very honest. And we'll take that at face value. I think CMC will probably be fine. And maybe is this a little bit hopeful expectation on my part since I have him in fantasy? Maybe. But I'm confident that CMC is fine.
So the Niners, they're going with a lot of issues. It's one of their top 4 lowest 6 scores we have currently. Another injury they had was a slot corner he plays around is Ambry Thomas, broken forearm. They're saying there's a chance, he could play week 1, just with the timeline. Your thoughts on that? And there's a chance maybe he could sit a little longer, right?
Well, look, he broke his forearm. I'm expecting surgery. Okay. I get it. Thomas Davis with the Panthers played in San Francisco, Super Bowl 50 with the Carolina Panthers 2 weeks after he broke his arm and had surgery. And if you remember way back then in the NFC Championship game, when he broke his arm, I said it on Twitter. I said, there's still an outside chance he plays the Super Bowl. People said, you're crazy. With a cast splint, different player, but it's also Thomas Davis, right?
Yeah, he ain't going to miss a game.
Look, the 3rd string running back with Christian McCaffrey's calf injury may leak into the regular season, right? They want to get him back up to speed, the whole deal. Christian McCaffrey, I don't think is. Ambry Thomas, no offense. Ambry Thomas playing with a cast on cannot be Ambry Thomas. Now, a number 1 shutdown corner playing with a cast on is still pretty good, right? So it's differences. It is harder to play with a cast. He would need to play with a cast. And with that, once again, it would not surprise me if he went on PUP for the start of the season. This is the difference between Thomas Davis, but it's also the Super Bowl, the penultimate game. He's also the main guy, et cetera, and play with a cast, different positions, and he just he was the number one guy at the time, right? And sideline to sideline. So Ambry Thomas, I'm not surprised if he goes on 4-week PUP for the start of the season.
2 ankle injuries to wide receivers that young kids that have got people worried. Got Malik Neighbors. He suffered, they said, a minor ankle injury. Not much video with that. Very speedy guy, cuts a lot. He's going to miss some key practice time. And also Josh Downs, second receiver for the Colts, high ankle. They're saying 4 to 6 weeks. That just shows you, I guess, the difference between ankle injuries and how they affect the different.
Well, even not all high ankle injuries are the same, but for a speed cutting out like Josh Downs, I think it's going to bother him. This is why this morning we considerably lowered his 6 score for the season and lowered the Colts wide receiver scores in general. Now it's Pittman, no Downs.
Yep.
But I think it's going to be a little hard for him to be ready week 1, even though 4 to 6 means he might be, and that's going to be difficult. Malik Neighbors, we got to look at some video. You know, to just, you know, we can look at Coachpeak Index for the Giants and what have you. But the point is, until we have video and we see something, it's hard to speculate what type of ankle sprain and how long, etc. So soon enough, we'll have some video of him on the sideline working out and coming back and how he looks. But, you know, if you believe the team, and look, we deal in injury analysis, not injury reporting. The reports are he's fine for the week 1.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that we have anything to add on that right now because there's nothing to analyze than just the stated report right there.
And like you said, you're at a key part in the season, like preseason too. Like everybody's going to say they're ready for the season. They're going to try to set aside, like they don't want to rule them out week 1, right? So there's going to be always week 1, yeah. So 1-2, I wanted to explain. Rondell Moore, he's going to be out for the season with a knee injury. He was air casted and lifted to hospital. So your thoughts? What I was talking to you about. So air cast doesn't always necessarily mean a broken leg, right? It can mean other things.
Air cast is a splint that, like a vacuum splint or a pump in air splint. It can be either way. It can be a vacuum splint where you're taking air out and then the beans stiffen up, but form around your leg. Or it can be air is pumped in and it stiffens up. Either way, it's the same thing. The idea is it's a flexible splint that will custom conform to your ankle, knee, leg, what have you, and stabilize it. So it doesn't always equal fracture like media says. Mm-hmm. It means you got to stabilize something, the ankle, the knee. It may not be a fracture. It could be a knee dislocation that they're stabilizing. Either way, Falcons are probably going to be in the market, right? They go 3 wides a lot.
Yeah,
probably in the market, and that's going to hurt them a little bit.
All right, Doc, just to lead into another topic. So the Olympics officially ended. I tried to get my daughter to watch it a billion times. She was bored with it. But, I mean, what were your thoughts on the Olympics finally ending? Going to wait another 4 years for the summer in LA?
You know, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, look, I will be the first to admit, once again, I didn't watch a lot of Olympics on TV because, you know, for me, I see all the streaming of, you know, the highlights and this, that, the other. So it's not the full picture. Steph Curry's shot, I mean, are you kidding me? Like, heaved up, falling back from his chest like prayer, you know, swish to help seal the game. Awesome. You know, U.S. continue to dominate in basketball. There was, you know, I saw a lot of snippets of different things, but I don't know. I mean, call me tech challenge. You know me, Taylor. I mean, to find the Olympics and the right channels and all the things, you know, besides in our house, the Padre game is usually on. So I see snippets of it. I think it was great. I think it was well received. People learned about a lot of different sports and fun things. I rather enjoyed the Olympics and the stories, but I will admit I didn't hardcore watch. And what's really hard is, you know, this is once every, quote, 4 years, right? Actually, technically 3 years, right? Because COVID. I found it very interesting. This is not a commentary. You guys know my COVID thoughts from before, that NFL, there's still no COVID transmission from one opponent to another in the NFL. And then when they return to play, why they'd be okay. But I find it interesting that 3 years ago, well, technically 4 years ago, but the Olympics got delayed because of COVID. and in 2021 instead of 2020. And now in 2024, someone who tested positive for COVID was allowed to compete.
The runner, Noah Lyles, yes. And you got a
Yeah,
bronze.
I found that, I mean, it's a lot of progress over time. The attitudes and whatever. And I get it, fear of the unknown. I'm not banging on anyone there. And, mutations of the virus. But that sums up quite in Olympics that was delayed and pushed back a year and masks and no fans or whatever, to someone who knowingly tested positive for COVID running.
That just to me shows you that you were always right, that you can't get it when you're doing the actual activity, right? You know what I mean? That's probably what they thought. He can run and be fine without actually transmitting to anybody. Or
well, but I'm an orthopedic surgeon, okay? And what I always try and do for fans and the general public is put on my head team physician hat. I'm not trying to be the cardiac expert. I'll talk to cardiac people and I'll try and interpret what that means for the GM, for the coach, for ownership, and for fans. And that's what I was doing with COVID. John Hopkins told you contract tracing was 15 feet, within 6 feet for 15 minutes.
Mhm.
It wasn't clear whether it was continuous 15 minutes. It wasn't completely clear indoors versus outdoor, although indoors more danger. Or was it just intermittent? But the reason why I felt like the NFL could get through a season, and it was quite topsy-turvy season, the COVID year, but the NFL was the first sport back, right? And people they block and tackle, lay on each other and sweat on each other. Like, that's all fine and good, but are you really within 6 feet for 15 minutes, your opponent? Not really. You line up and then you move on.
Yeah.
I remember when I first went out to dinner when restaurants first opened up, I went to a steakhouse and I timed the waitress.
The French Laundry.
It wasn't French Laundry.
Yes.
I like to eat like my rule of thumb. I'm not nearly as bad as you. I like my
No, you're fine. You're normal.
My rule of thumb is if it takes longer for the waiter to describe what I'm about to put in my mouth than for me to put it in my mouth, chew it, and swallow it, it's not for me. And that's kind of French Laundry, right? I mean, here's this little, it's fancy as all get out and it's good, but whatever. Yeah. But the Fleming Steakhouse waitress was next to us within 6 feet for the entire dinner. And I literally stopwatched on and off 4 minutes. Can I take your order? Next. Can I take your drink order? Next. Bring your drink. They're coming and going a lot, but the cumulative time was only 4 minutes. Right? Yeah. I don't know. I didn't mean to get off on a COVID discussion. That was a medically. This is what I do. I give medical information to the team and to try and now give it to the general public and fans.
So final thoughts, Doc. I just want to get everybody, make sure they get that 2004 NFL preview like we've already talked about before. It's going to be on the site for a little bit. Make sure you get that. It's a live document. And like every single week until the season, we're going to keep on adding players if they get hurt in their analysis. Insights are always on sixscore.com, and we'll be continually putting up a lot of fantasy articles as that season approaches as well.
And we haven't done a lot. You haven't done a lot, and our algorithm hasn't done a lot on preseason football, only because it's so dependent on what the coaching rotation is, right? As opposed to real football and injury. So we stay away. But the Six Score Sports News Central sick picks are still extremely hot related to MLB right now.
Yes, those are humming around, and then we're going to be putting out a lot
of. I don't mean to be a doubter of the guys and the injury analysis, but gosh, you guys are almost unsustainable hot, right? I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, we know injuries play a role and there's an advantage, but there's still, exit velocity of 120 miles an hour straight at somebody versus exit velocity of 80, but it blooped into a hole, right? I mean, there's still the element of luck involved. But
Especially
you guys-
baseball.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have been good there. And so have our Padres, or my Padres, or my son's Padres.
And my Phillies will probably see you in the playoffs. That'll be fun. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We're all doing well.
Oh, what's so funny? I was prison moment. I was some friends yesterday. The kids are over the weekend. They're like, we should trade Tatis right now.
This second.
Well, I get it. At the time, the Padres are 14-2 after the All-Star break without Tatis. But they all also lead headed into the All-Star break. We're under 500 those few games without Tatis, right? I mean,
And no pitchers too. You're winning all these games with just figuring it out. I think like once you get a full, roster, it's going to be a little scary, healthy, right? But right now you're winning without all the key players.
All good. All right. Be sure to get the preseason injury preview free. Check out the website, sicscore.com, and soon unveiling some new features for the regular NFL season. And please do the subscribe and like per usual. And thanks for watching.